Everyone should own 8,000 dry erase boards starting now. Go out, buy a dry erase board, do it now. I love dry erase boards. It's not a cult. I like dry erase boards. Yellowha, what is up my homesicles? I am Atticus Rants, office supply enthusiast and rant extraordinaire, and welcome to Atticus Rants About Stuff, the #1 podcast hosted by someone who owns not 1, not 2, but 7 dry erase boards of varying sizes. Without further ado, let's get down to today's business. Dry erase boards are fantastic. Chalkboards, not so much. If you couldn't tell already, I am a big fan of dry erase boards. If you think owning 7 dry erase boards is crazy, I'll have you know that I am constantly running out of room and having to erase old stuff to fill in with new stuff. There's just so much to love about dry erase boards. So this is going to be probably a shorter episode than the other ones because it's just going to be a big ol' list about all the reasons I love dry erase boards. The best thing to use a dry erase board for is they're just a very convenient way to jot down quick ideas. It's nice to have a nice open canvas to work with, you know. You have plenty of space to put whatever you want. You can jot down your diagrams, your drawings, and it's not something where if you screw up, it's there and it's going to be a hassle to erase, or if you're writing a pen on paper, you know, you get no chance to erase usually. But with a whiteboard, you have all this space to work with, and you just have this open canvas that you can erase and change anything so that it can constantly evolve as your ideas evolve. So you can jot down diagrams or whatever you want, which you can't do also in, say, Microsoft Word or Google Drive. You know, you can write down all this stuff, but it's a little more annoying to actually draw out a diagram or anything like that. With a whiteboard, easy peasy, you can erase whatever you want, change whatever you want, and it's also better than paper for another reason. Whiteboards are reusable, so paper, whenever you get done, you know, you have to throw away the paper or file it away, unless for some reason you decide to use pencil or an erasable pen, and every time you're done using the paper, you just erase everything and do it again, which sounds like a big ol' hassle to me. And it's also, as I said, better than online options or digital options, generally, if you need to sketch. Now, there is the exception of using a tablet, but that doesn't give you as much room as a dry erase board gives you. The other thing is I like to have a physical thing to write on and look at. It's nice to even, like, in the middle of the night, all my devices are turned off, but I have an inspiration. I can just turn on a light and write down what I want on my dry erase board, and there's no need to look at a screen or really mess up my circadian rhythm with any of that blue light. I can just write down whatever I want on my dry erase board. The second thing I really like to use dry erase boards to do is for organizing things. So I use my dry erase boards as a very convenient to-do list. I'm a very forgetful person. I'm really good at being like, oh yeah, I'll do that, and then I just completely forget about it, which is why the first thing I do pretty much any time I have an event, I write it down somewhere, I put it on Google Calendar. I'm a very forgetful person. So I use dry erase boards to make it seem like I'm a very organized person who remembers everything, when in fact I just write absolutely everything down. So whenever I have something I know I need to do, including recording this podcast, I write it down on my dry erase board, and I go, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that, and then I do it. So you can use dry erase boards as a calendar, and you can also use them for reminders. So having a calendar is great, and using Google Calendar is great, but, you know, sometimes you don't have things with a set date, or you just have tasks you need to do, and yeah, you can have multiple apps, or just have an online setup for that too, but I like to have something physical that I can look at each morning, and I can use it as either thing, a calendar or a reminder. And you can even buy dry erase boards that are specifically designed to be a to-do list or a calendar. And a lot of people like to use those. Now, I personally prefer to stick with a regular dry erase board just because I think it's more flexible. But if you really like to use a dry erase board for a calendar, and you know you always want to use a dry erase board for a calendar, you can buy a calendar dry erase board that's already, laid out for you with a grid and all of the days. So you can use a regular dry erase board or a special dry erase board, and either one is going to give you a great experience for making sure that you don't forget any events and don't forget any of the work that you have to do. Now, this is in my opinion, but I think it's just fun to use a dry erase board. I think they look good and they feel good to use. I mean, what do people do when they're bored in a classroom? They go to the dry erase board and they start doing random stuff on it. They look good, they're fun to use, and here's where I'm gonna address some of the complaints that people have about dry erase boards. So I think that most dry erase boards, a clean dry erase board looks fantastic. Now, here's the problem, is that a lot of times you go somewhere and you find this terribly smudged dry erase board, and it's like, wow, that looks terrible. It's like off-white, it's just has markings everywhere, it has scratches and stuff, and it looks terrible. But that's always user error, and in a second I'll go over how you can just not do that. I don't know how it's such a common problem, considering I've had dry erase boards for years, never had that problem, but I think when a dry erase board is properly cleaned and cared for, it looks fantastic. It's actually, in my opinion, just nice decoration, even blank. And there's a variety of colors that are available for the markers. You can organize all sorts of stuff by color code. I mean, there are dozens, if not over 100 different colors that you can just go out to Walmart and buy. I know I've had all sorts of markers over the years, and it's nice for color coding things, or maybe if you just want a little pop of color in your room or on your dry erase board. So now let's get into more detail on the complaints I commonly hear about dry erase boards. So I mentioned that dry erase boards can have stains all over them, and that can make them look pretty ugly. And that is completely user error. As I said, I've had dry erase boards for like 7 years. None of them have any permanent color stains or anything like that. As mentioned earlier, this can just be by a failure to clean. Sometimes you do have to clean dry erase boards on occasion. Sometimes if you have marker that's been on there for quite some time, it can be a little stubborn to get off, and some people just try to wipe an eraser over it and it's smudged and they call it done, and that's how you get staining, by leaving those smudges on there a really long time. There's this great invention, it's called Expo Spray. It's specifically designed for dry erase boards. You give it a quick little squirt, you wipe it off with a paper towel or a rag, and it looks good as new. We have sprays that remove those smudges, and so if you find a dry erase board that's just absolutely covered in smudges, it usually means that they've only been using eraser, and they've been leaving marker on there a super long time, and when they try to erase it, they don't care to follow up with any dry erase spray. And in fact, many of these boards, if you just try using dry erase spray on them, can still be recoverable even after they've had smudges on them for eons. Now, on occasion, you will run into one that's just had stains on it so long that it's pretty much baked into the dry erase board, but usually that can easily be prevented by just even using a little water on a paper towel. A damp paper towel could easily do it. Now, another common reason that stains are found on dry erase boards is by using the wrong type of marker on a dry erase board. It's shocking the amount of whiteboards I've seen that just have permanent marker on them, or, regular paper marker on them. Those are not for dry erase boards, and if you use them, well, permanent marker, of course, is designed to be permanent and doesn't really like to come off after it dries, although you can fight it and get it off, and paper marker just loves to smudge and stain. So a lot of the times people will keep permanent markers in the same area as their dry erase board markers, and to me that's just setting yourself up for disaster. If you're keeping those two things together, Just don't do that, because you will eventually accidentally grab one thinking it's the other. Now, if you do get permanent marker on a dry erase board, there actually is a window of time when you first put it on there. If you get behind quickly with Expo, I think I've done this before, you come behind it really quickly with Expo the second you notice your mistake, and oftentimes you can still get it off. But permanent markers and dry erase board markers should not be anywhere near each other, and that's a very common cause of stains. Other people also complain that, hey, my whiteboard smudges a lot. My dry erase board, every time I erase, even the new stuff, smudges. And there's a couple common reasons for having a lot of smudges happen on your dry erase board. Now, I mentioned that, it will smudge. Almost any dry erase marker will smudge, no matter what equipment you're using. If you leave it on there for quite a long time, that's just the nature of leaving marker on there for quite some time. That's solved by Expo Spray. But sometimes you'll write with a brand new marker and erase, and it just smudges absolutely everywhere. And that's terrible. The most common cause, in my experience, for a ton of smudges on a dry erase board is going to be a bad eraser. If no matter what you do, no matter what marker you use, it just keeps smudging, it could be that you're using an eraser that's like oversaturated or worn out. So a lot of people will just try to get a marker that has a built-in eraser on it. I don't like using built-in marker erasers because they're so small, they can't really handle much erasure before they just start losing their ability to clean the whiteboard very well. The tiny eraser on the top of markers works great for like 30 seconds, and then it just starts smudging more than it erases most of the time. So I would say it's always good to invest in a dedicated full eraser for your dry erase board. I've never really had any issues that come from having an overused full-size eraser. I've had ones that last for years. Even the cheap ones usually will still last you quite some time and will be more than enough to cleanly clean your dry erase board. Now, the other thing that can cause your newly written marker to smudge a lot is sometimes, on rare occasion, it can be the markers themselves. This isn't that common. By far, I think most markers do not smudge if they're, new, relatively well kept. Usually they shouldn't smudge, but on rare occasion, if you get like a really cheap marker, it can just like to smudge all over the place. I haven't even found a brand that really does this consistently. I've only had it happen a couple times when using other people's dry erase boards, but on occasion, the marker can be the bad apple, and maybe this is just a, defect in manufacturing where it's oversaturated or something. I don't know what really causes markers to be bad sometimes, but on occasion, you will get a bad marker. In that case, dry erase markers are really cheap. Just get one that doesn't smudge. Expo's the biggest brand that you can find at Walmart. I've never had any issues with them, although I will say I personally actually most enjoy Up and Up brand dry erase markers. I really love them, and that's Target store brand. It's actually, I think, cheaper than Expo name brand. And I just think they make fantastic dry erase board markers, and I've always loved them, never had any smudging issues with them. Now, the final complaint I hear people make about dry erase boards is their markers just always being, if you pick one up, it's either dead or the tips are flattened. Like every other issue I've mentioned pretty much, it's a user issue. This is not even an equipment issue. This is almost always a user issue. Dry erase markers can work for literally years if they're treated correctly. I mean, I have not had any issues with my dry erase markers from years ago. I'll pick them up, and occasionally they will go dead if they're really old or you've left the cap off, but dead dry erase markers are most often caused by someone just leaving the markers out for a long time without the cap, just letting them get nice and exposed to the elements and just dry out. So make sure that when you're done using your dry erase marker, please put the cap back on, because that will make them last so much longer. I always make sure I put the caps back on. I've had ones that last for years before going dead with fairly regular use. I mean, maybe not public school level use, but I use my markers fairly regularly, and none of them die that quickly. So the other thing is, just don't leave dead dry erase markers in the batch with all of your good ones, because then you'll keep grabbing them out and you'll keep running into that same dead one. Stop putting it back in your dry erase marker pile. Throw it away. Once it's dead, throw it away. Sometimes you'll have to get new markers and rotate out equipment, but if you just leave a really dead one constantly in the pile, you're gonna be annoyed, because every time you grab it, you're not gonna want to use it. So why keep it in the pile? Now, flat tips. Like, the edge of the marker just being completely flattened and terrible to use is my pet peeve, because it's not a defect in the design of the marker. I'd have to try to flatten the tips on my markers. I've never had any marker that just has flat, sad little barely stubs sticking out. That's just caused by people who seem to think they really need to, like, press down really hard to use the dry erase marker. I figure it's gotta be the same crowd who constantly breaks mechanical pencil lead, because I've never experienced this. Dry erase markers don't require force to use. They're like any other marker. You do not need to press down hard on them. You do not need to slam them into the surface. You can just use them normally. There's no need for all this excessive pressure. So please show your dry erase markers some love, and just don't bully them. When used correctly and you're using the correct supplies, dry erase boards are a fantastic experience in my opinion, and just they're not that hard to use. And some people seem to make it just a terrible experience. Just write gently on the board and you have this great surface that you can write on. Now, I've had friends before say, yeah, dry erase boards are fine, but I prefer a chalkboard. So, I'm not a big fan of a chalkboard, to say the least. I don't like chalkboards. I think that if you have a chalkboard and don't have a dry erase board, yeah, a chalkboard is a fine enough substitute, I guess. But if you have the option of choosing one or the other, it's an easy choice for me. Dry erase board all the way. And that's because the con of a chalkboard is so inherent to its design that it's part of the name. And it's not the board part. I love a dry erase board. It's the chalk. I do not like chalk. I think that chalk is the giant limiting factor of a chalkboard. I don't have a problem with the background. In fact, I do like the aesthetics of a chalkboard, probably more than I like the aesthetics of a dry erase board, or at least they're very comparable. The problem is that chalk dust is really annoying, because you write with chalk, and theoretically that should be the end of it. There's chalk on there, it's written, but no, chalk dust is terrible. Whenever you write with chalk, dust particles go everywhere, and like, I have dry erase boards in my room. I would not want to have a chalkboard in my room. Dust would get everywhere and my allergies would just go insane. I mean, chalk dust causes allergies. I mean, it just flies through the air and has a fun little journey where it coats everything and goes right into your lungs. You gotta love having chalk dust everywhere. Or don't, because chalk is a terrible... I don't like chalk, at least not indoors. Outdoors, chalk is a lot cooler. Chalkboards also do smear, not just like they sometimes smear, like a dry erase board, sometimes that can happen. Chalkboards do smear. You can't really erase it. Anytime you erase with a chalkboard, you could be picking up most of the chalk, but you're still leaving a nice little streak of chalk wherever you've erased. And over time, the longer you have a chalkboard, it becomes brighter and brighter until it's like this really ugly off black color that it doesn't look right. It's like a weird powdery color that I don't like. I don't think that looks that great. So you would have to clean it off, because inherent to it's not something where if you erase or use regularly, that's not going to happen. In fact, regular use is just going to increase the rate at which your chalkboard just starts getting weird colors all over it. And chalk breaks really easily, even if you don't put much pressure on it. Holding chalk at the wrong angle can just make it go snap, and it's gone. And technically, you can buy chalk holders for it, but that's adding extra expenses on top of having to buy chalk. And it's a workaround that doesn't really solve the ultimate issue. Also, chalk can make an ugly noise. I didn't write that down in my notes, but I just thought about it. Chalkboards can make some very uncomfortable noises. So that's why I don't really like chalkboards and don't think they're on the same level as a dry erase board. So I hope I made a fairly good argument for why everyone should own 8,000 dry erase boards starting now. Go out, buy a dry erase board, do it now. I love dry erase boards. It's not a cult. I like dry erase boards. Thank you so much for listening. I'm actually looking at the recording, and this has ended up a longer recording than I thought it would be. Maybe I'll trim it down a lot. Maybe it ended up a lot shorter after I edited it. But it feels like I've been talking for quite some time about a fairly, most people would say, bland topic. But I like it, and that's what this show is all about. Me yelling at you in my closet about something that no one else cares about, but I care about way too passionately. So again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope everyone has had a wonderful first couple of weeks of 2023. Wow, time moves fast. It feels like it. I'm still stuck in 2022. I might still be stuck in 2020 sometimes. I hope you guys continue to have a wonderful new year, and I guess I'll hear you guys. You'll hear me. I won't do anything. I'll yell at you guys from my closet in about a month, hopefully, unless I forget about the show entirely. Goodbye!